Hi everyone. As we start the semester, I thought I'd put together a short video on some of the assessment items that we have coming up. The first thing I'd point you to is on the landing page or the home page of the unit. Have a look at that video about how we deliver and some of the key dates, etc., around how things operate. That will probably answer some of the big questions that you have. But in this video, I'm going to have a look at the first assessment item that is due, which is crazily called assessment item number 2, right? It's your personal code, your reflection and your personal code, assessment item 2. So what I'm going to do is have a look at some of the materials we've got and go through some of the stuff you might want to think about doing and how it all fits together for this assessment piece. Why don't we start that now? So you can see I'm here on Canvas, and if I go over either to modules or I think about assessments gets me there, I can go about assessments, right? And I can see all my assessment pieces. Or alternatively, if I click in modules, go past the overview and the online links into assessments. Okay, so the assessment overview gives us a kind of background to how all of the assessments fit together. About the use of AI, I'll get into that for our next piece. Some details on the portfolio, and then the due dates for the portfolio. I know that that looks a lot, but I point you back to the first video contained on the landing page, which goes through how they operate. Essentially, every 2 weeks, you do a reading, a problem set, and a quiz. It's that simple, hopefully. Anyway, there'll be some more detail on that, or you can ask us questions about that as we go. That's not what I'm really looking to do in this video. In this video, what I want to look at is the second assessment item piece. So let me go through, because we actually have a little page for each component of the portfolio, and then we have our personal code of conduct. So you can see that this second assessment task is based upon reflections that you do over the first month, and it's due in week 5, okay, the Monday of week 5. All of the details are really here on this attached task sheet. So why don't I download that and open it, just like you will. Okay, so here's the personal code task sheet. It's worth 20% when it's due, that you got to do it via Canvas. It's an individual assessment, maximum 1,200 words, and we've got the stuff it links into that we should be doing. I have a little bit about AI here, but I'll give it to you in layperson's terms as we go. What do you have to do? Okay, it's a reflection where you come up with kind of the beginnings of a professional code of ethics that you might want. So what we ask you to do is to detail 3 key values or approaches that you aim as the core of your professional code, right? And you should explain to us why you chose them and how that links to your reflection. Like, why did you choose those 3? What about the reflection makes you think that this is the way you want to conduct yourself in business? A second thing that you have to do is say, well, look, I think this is what I want to do, but I might not do that in reality, because we know that there are biases that mean we don't do what we plan to do. Okay. So this section, this little dot point wants you to say, okay, that's what I plan to do. What biases might I be more subject to that would stop me doing that? 2 at the individual level, 2 at the group level. So we discuss the individual level in week 1, and we discuss the group level in week 2. So you've got to think about and reflect on how you make decisions and when you are subject to biases, and which ones you think might affect you more, and why do you say that? What justify that based upon your reflection. Finally, the thing you have to do is come up with an accountability mechanism. So what does that mean? Well, look, anytime you actually want to do anything, whether it's follow a code, follow a diet, do some exercise. You plan to do something. Like you have this code that you plan to follow, or you have an exercise regime you plan to follow, but then you might not follow it. But you can put into place mechanisms to hold yourself accountable to that standard that you've set. This will become clearer in week 3, and we do some exercises, but you've got to say, like, how am I going to make sure that I actually follow through on this particular code? That's what you've got to do for that bit. So they're the 3 things that you have to do. Also, please note that we don't have a pre-prepared idea about how you should go about that, right? We're not actually saying that there is a kind of correct model or anything like that. We don't have a set format for how to present it. I would suggest, though, that you have 3 different things that you want to do. So you probably want to set out some way to differentiate between those 3 things. You'll also notice when I look at the CRA that there's no actual research marks. So you can get 100% with just the material that we have in this lecture, provided you think and reflect on it. Okay, that's critical. What else do you need to know about this particular assessment piece? So when we look at the CRA, and I'll go into that into more detail, you actually need to satisfy all the dot points under a CRA, and I'll show you how that works. And we also provide an overview that if we suspect or we see that you're not following good academic practice, it will override the detailed CRAs that we have. So here's the CRA. What do we mean by this kind of issue that we want you have to satisfy each? Okay, so just say you had really good understanding of ethical principles, but you were off a bit in terms of biases, and your accountability measure was at a 6 level. It was good, could have been a bit better, but it was good. What does that mean? That means in this subject, you get a grade of 5 against that criteria. To get a 7, you need this, and you need this, and you need this, right? There's an and between each of these. So it's not like we go, oh, let's average these 2 and you get a 6. No, that's not how it works. You have to have all 3. Okay, so it's the minimum across the 3 is where you're graded. Okay, and the same thing occurs across the reflection. So what you can see is we have 2 CRAs. One is really that you've demonstrated the application of the content, that you know what it means and that you can apply it. And we have 3. We have 1 for the ethics code you choose. We have 1 for the biases, the second part of the tasks, and 1 for the accountability mechanism, right? That's why there's 3. And to get a 7, you got to do them all really well. To get a 6, you got to do them at least all thoroughly. Okay. So that's how that CRA works. The second CRA is about your reflection. Now, reflections are quite difficult for you to demonstrate what you've done. Now, what we do have is about depth and quality. Okay. We don't have a hard and fast kind of rule, but what we don't want kind of surface level reflections. Surface level reflections are going to sit you in a 4, right? Adequate depth. It's adequate, but it's not really any good. So how deep? How much have you really thought about it? And then we've also got something that talks about volume. Okay, how much reflection is evident in your work? Now, if I were you, I'd be sitting there going, I really only have 1,200 words. So how do I actually show volume? My answer to you is that is one of the reasons that we have developed these AI prompts for you. So let me explain why that becomes important. We understand that as an undergraduate, reflection tasks can be a little more difficult because you might have had limited opportunity to actually engage in the workforce for any length of time, to come across significant ethical issues. Particularly if you're early on in your career, you probably have more limited authority. So decision making becomes like a little bit shallower, if I can put it that way. So what we're trying to do here is to not penalize people who are early on in their career because they don't have a lot to draw on in terms of reflection. So it's going to be hard around that. How are we going to do that? Well, what we're trying to do this semester is to use AI prompts as a way for you to demonstrate your depth and quality of reflection. Now, I want to be very clear. We are not marking what you do in these prompts per se. But what they are is evidence of you having done extensive reflection. Also, if a marker is there reading it and going, well, why would you say that? And you refer to an appendix which has your reflection in it, they can go, oh, I see. That's got depth, that's got quality. So really, the AI prompts and the interaction around it are not directly accessible, but they support what is in your assignment. And I would highly recommend that you do them. It's not compulsory. I would highly recommend you do them and then put them in as an appendix, right? Put each prompt and your response as an appendix to the main document. Then you have really good solid evidence of the depth and quality of your assessment. The prompts are also built to try and help you learn something about your own ethical approach. So in order to see how that might work, why don't I do a prompt or two here for you so you can get a better understanding of how this actually works. So you can see how we've set up each week. And in the modules section, you can see each week is set up as a kind of cluster of activities. And there's this after the tutorial page. So in this after the tutorial page, we have the specific prompt for this week when we actually have a prompt. Okay, so we don't have a prompt for every week, but particularly for the first 3, there's going to be a prompt. Now, I've tested them on ChatGPT, but I think you can have a go in Copilot or other systems, Claude, if you're more familiar. Part of embracing the modern world is being able to cross platforms with what you want. So it should work in most others. If they don't, please let me know or see a tutor and we can work something out. But here's our prompt. I'm going to go into ChatGPT. Okay, so here I am in ChatGPT, and I'm just going to paste in the prompt that I copied over from Canvas, and let's see what happens. So it's developing scenarios for me. Okay, you're a scenario large company, operates in multiple countries. Your board is debating whether open factory wage environmental standards are lower. Some argue that as long as it's legal, it's ethical. Others argue that ethics involves more than just following the law. How would you explain to the board what ethics is and how it differs from simply following the law? Oh, okay, that's an interesting question. Okay, what is legal is what is mandated by the government or state as a set of rules in a country. In contrast, ethics is very much broader and generally involves when someone is taking action and it will affect others. We need to choose what the right thing to do is. A lot of times, what is legal vice versa, but not always. For instance, in some countries, it might be legal to stop a class of person from being educated. It is a different question as to whether this is ethical. Ooh, okay, so it gives me some feedback, see, and it helps me think about. I've had to think about, do I actually know the difference between, I've had to reflect on it. Okay, good response. You've distinguished ethics from all analysis on ethical relativism. You're a diplomat representing your country at an international conference. Another nation has permitting child labour. It's argue that in their culture it's a necessary part of family survival. Some delegates argue that others depend on culture. Do you believe judgments depend on cultural context, or do you think ethical principles should apply on your reasoning? Okay, I'm actually not going to keep going because I don't want you typing in what I do to similar questions. But I hope you can see that how you answer this will start to give you feedback and reflection in terms of your approach to your assignment. Okay, what I've done is I've actually gone through and answered the questions so that you can get a sense of the summary of the feedback that you can get out of doing the actual chat. So let's have a look at it. Okay, so the first thing is it starts to give me this sense of how my understanding of ethics is, my point on ethical relativism, and what might influence my decisions. These might become important when I'm explaining why I've chosen what I've chosen in the code. Really specifically on the actual task, you'll notice that it's giving me feedback on what I might actually be more likely to suffer from if I've answered these questions honestly and accurately. So then I could incorporate this as part of my reflection piece by using these biases and thinking about how these biases might affect me actually following through on it. Also gives me a sense, this will make more sense by the time you do week 2, etc., on what I gravitate towards in terms of my personal ethical approach, and therefore what I should emphasize in my code. Finally, it gives me this log to give me a sense of when I answered those things and a summary of my responses. So what I would do from here is I would copy this and would paste it into, just simply like that, into a Word document. So I have a summary of it. If you wanted, you could actually copy all of the stuff that you do if you wanted a more extensive. But I think a summary should give us a fair sense about you having actually completed the task and done some reflection on it. The other thing that I might then do is go back to it, and you can see, if you want to, that provides a structure. Would you like to explore these concepts further? If you want to, yes, we explore confirmation bias and its effect on me following through with a code of ethics. So what this demonstrates is that you can go deeper on the 1 or 2 biases that you want, or other areas of the reflection. Now, what I really want to stress is all of this is input. Yes, you can copy and paste this as your appendix, but once you've done this, you on your own, without any AI, have to write the 1200 word code. Okay, so that should be very clear. It's quite okay to use the AI in terms of research, helping you reflect, helping you understand topics better. But the 1200 words you submit need to be your work. Okay, so not using generative AI. Gavin, does that mean I can't use spell check? No. Okay, there's technically spell check is okay. So what you would normally do is saying this is my work. As long as you can say what I'm handing in is my work, not someone else's, not an assignment mill, not ChatGPT. It's my work. Okay. The appendices in your reflection, yes, the AI is generating some stuff with you, but really it's your work. You're actually reflecting on it and thinking about it. So it's what you're doing, even when we're using generative AI that way. So hopefully that gives you an idea about how the assessment piece is structured and how you should approach it. You have to do three things: come up with a code with at least 3 values, come up with some biases, 4 biases, 2 at the personal level, 2 at the group level, and how they might affect your application of the code in the workforce, and then an accountability mechanism. How do you do the reflection? Because there's no research, etc., as part of this. You've got all the material that you need in what we provide. Well, you can use generative AI to help you reflect, and we've got some prompts to help you do that. When you do a prompt, it's evidence of your depth and quality of reflection, and you can copy and paste what you do as an appendix to the main document. But the main document, the 1200 words, is something that you must produce. It must be your work. So I hope that clarifies things around this first assessment piece. And as always, if something still isn't clear, please drop us a line and we'll see if we can help.